Hello friends, here I am with new story. I hope you all like the video and subscribe to my channel. So let's start the video. First of all, here its summary. Naruto saves Ino and her team from certain death, but it has been so long since Ino and all her friends have seen the hero of Konoha. How will they all react when they suddenly have their friend back? Pairing Naruto x Ino. I hope you all like the video and subscribe to my channel. She was running on pure adrenaline now. She was fast approaching the stage of giving up on her fight for her very survival as she began to feel her body grow tired and worn out. She was currently standing staring at her opponent at that one moment in time. Her breathing was coming in heavy and inconsistent breaths. She was standing within a crater no larger than herself that had been created when a great force was applied to her body that she had somehow managed to fend off, but that had come at the cost of the last of her chakra, and just now she was only running on enough chakra to keep her alive. In short, she was fucked. On both sides of her were the three that would be her team. They were all barely just out of the academy and were on their first C-rank mission. What a catastrophe of a mission it had turned out to be. It reminded her of one she had heard about in her past, where a simple C-rank turned into an A-rank. Coming out of her momentary reverie, she looked over the one who had caused so many problems for her and her team. The man opposite them was a rogue ninja from the village hidden in the clouds. They were a tall man of maybe 6 feet or so and were also fairly muscly too. His head was adorned with short green hair that had a golden zigzag running down the center of his head. His eyes were what were causing her and her team the problem, however. How the man had come to procure the eyes was a mystery even to her, but she knew that there was no good reason that the man currently had them. He had the Sharingan, the eye jutsu that should have been wiped out except from a few extenuating circumstances. Behind her team were all taking in their rugged breaths too. She spared a glance at the three of them in order to assess how well they were all doing. Sadly, they were not faring that very well. Her team consisted of 3 girls, surprisingly enough, although it may have seemed strange at the time of placement, to their sensei and the Hokage. The team made perfect sense. There was Haiku Hyuga. She was a very outspoken girl who, although might not be sure of her physical abilities, was sure of her gift of the gab. She wore clothes that resembled the attire that Hinata Hyuga used to wear, with the only difference being that her jacket was black instead of the same gray as Hinata's. One thing that separated her from her clan the most probably was the fact that her hair was not the black hair of most Hyugas. Instead, her hair was blonde, very bright blonde. She was somewhat of an anomaly within her own clan. She was at least lucky that the head of the main branch was on her side. There was also Noma Vidya. She was a very shy girl that would be the almost exact duplicate of Hinata in her early days. Noma, despite being of only 12 years of age, was already viewed by those that knew her as beautiful. She had long purple hair that was tied into a high ponytail. Her eyes were a beautiful indigo color too, to match her hair. Her clothing consists of black shinobi pants and battle sandals. She had on a white t-shirt that was covered over by a gray jacket. She was currently bent over with her hands on her knees, breathing heavily while trying to keep her eyes on her enemy. Last but by no means least, was Kyokihi, the daughter of the late Asumasaru Tobi and Kirinahi. She had her parents' deep black hair and her mother's deep red eyes. She wore clothes that looked much like the ones her mother used to wear, but these were instead of white and red attire. The colors were different and were black and green, really giving her an outfit that defined her perfectly. She, like both of her teammates, was tired but was currently just behind her sensei's leg, at her sensei's instruction of course, otherwise she would have been standing side by side with her. It would appear that Shikano and Yin have gotten too used to the Sharingan being used to help you that when it is finally used against you, there is no way you have to combat it. The man before them spoke in no real definitive tone at all. He just simply spoke to them, pointing out the information they already knew. We haven't been used to the Sharingan being on our side. There are no Sharingan users left in Konoha besides Kakashi-sensei, and it can't be passed on genetically from him. Haiku answered the man before them. His attention turned to her and he noticed that she had the pale eyes of the Hyuga. He felt a grin spreading across his face as he stared into those spare expanses of silver. Haiku swore that she saw the Tomo in his Sharingan spinning wildly before stooping in place again. Is that so? Then I guess the Sharingan is almost a dead Kekkei Genkai almost then, isn't it? The man asked rhetorically as he indicated to his pair of eyes with a smile. Noma lifted herself up from her knees and looked across to the man who was opposite them. On closer inspection she looked at the clothes that the man wore but was stopped when she noticed the clothing he was in fact wearing. Billowing in the wind was a symbol that was thought to have long since lost its meaning. Ever since the fourth shinobi wore that symbol and what it represented had been lost. Akatsuki no Ma breathed fearfully as she took in the man's attire. It was indeed the Akatsuki cloak that the man wore. The black cloak with the red clouds adorned all over. This man now wore the clothing that signified him as a dangerous enemy ninja, but there were two circumstances in which the man was wearing these clothes for. First of all was that Akatsuki was reforming and he was part of the elite caliber of shinobi that were drafted by the Akatsuki. The second possibility was simply that he had procured the cloak from somewhere and wished to take the image that the Akatsuki had left in order to gain himself a name. To all extents and purposes it had done what he had wanted. He was called the Red Dawn simply on account of the red clouds across the black cloak. You are correct, little girl. I am Akatsuki. I possess the Sharingan, am one of the elite shinobi of Akatsuki and have managed to beat you all back without the use of my Sharingan. If you give up now and become my slaves, then your lives will not be forfeit, the man said with the tiniest hint of enjoyment within his words. All of the girls noticeably grimaced at the very thought of handing themselves over to the vile man that claimed to be part of the elite criminal organization, but what other choice did they have? The three girls looked at each other. They were out of chakra and ultimately out of luck. Resigning themselves to their fate, they began to move off only to be stopped by the outstretched arm of their sensei. Do not listen to his misleading words, she hissed to them as she turned to them. Oceanic blue eyes looked to them through a disgusted scowl. One eye was hidden behind the long blonde bang, but they could still feel its piercing glare upon them. The girls were all dumbstruck on what their next move should be and were only capable of standing still. Even their sensei was out of chakra, and if she was, then they had not many other options. Ino-sensei, we are all out of chakra. What other options do we have? We will die otherwise, came the voice of Kyoki, the shakiest that Ino had ever heard it. That instantly struck a chord within the woman and she turned away from them. Run, Ino said to them as she stared at the enemy before her. Her entire squad stood still dumbfounded after the words spoken to them. They could not deny it was an order, but such an order was ludicrous. To leave a comrade in battle was most unfitting of a shinobi of the Leaf Village. Ino suddenly turned on them and with her face contorted in almost evident fear she screamed at them, "Run!" She screamed at the top of her voice as the three girls took a step back at the abruptness of Ino's movement. There would be no point in doing that, my dears. Even if you three were to run, I could easily overpower your sensei and then capture you three. If you simply kneel down right now, we need not go through much hassle, the man said as suddenly he was right in between all of them. Ino was not ready for such a hasty movement on the man's part and was sloppy to react. In short, she turned around quickly to find that Kyoki was standing with the man directly behind her, his arm around her neck a little too tightly. The other two girls were lying on the ground away from the pair, clearly shot out of the area. His gaze moved from Ino to the girl in his hold and Ino shuddered when she saw the man's tongue come out of his mouth and lick his lips. A little underdeveloped, but given enough time I can see you becoming a very well-endowed lady, if you catch my drift? The man said with a lecherous grin as he brought his attention back up to the blonde-haired woman before him. He could see the hatred and anger brimming up within her eyes, but that was also accompanied by the sheer hopelessness that she was feeling right now. She simply could not do anything at all to save her student, couldn't do anything to alleviate the terror the girl was going through. Do not ever doubt the power of Akatsuki. Those who were part of the group before are weak-minded fools who did not know what power they could have, but I know the power I can control. With my influence I can control the world through the fear of the people. That is what the aim of Akatsuki should have been. World domination. The man finished as he looked to the sky, almost as if anticipating something climactic to happen. Let go of my student now, you sick fuck, Ino ground out as she made to move towards her student and the pervert that wanted to hold her. The man smiled at the way in which Ino had talked to him and also the fact that a woman with little chakra left thought she command him. A woman thought they could command a man, him. How ludicrous this idea was that he burst out laughing. You honestly believe that you can command me to do anything, woman? You serve one purpose in life and one only. That is to tend to the needs of men. The man shot back at her as his boisterous laughter permeated through the air at her current predicament. Ino felt this sting to her pride in the manner in which the shinobi spoke of women, but did not allow it to bother her, as she knew she had one last bet to take on the arsehole before all avenues had been checked off the list and they were not destined to leave this place. I am sorry to say, but I disagree with what you have to say about women and men, and I will be taking back my student. Ino yelled as she forced her right palm forward towards the man's face, which caused him to move backwards in order to dodge the hit. In the process, he let go of the girl within his grasp. Ino dodged around her student and continued on the offensive. She sent another fist crashing forwards, this time closed, and felt her knuckles brushing against the skin on his face. She took great glee in the surprised look on the man's face. Bringing her right fist up a second time, she intended to use an uppercut on the man until she felt the momentum in her hand stopping suddenly. Looking to her hand, she could see it covered by a larger scarred hand that belonged to the man in question. Women should not try to hurt men, otherwise they must be disciplined, the man said with an evil glint in his voice. He forced her arm out in the opposite direction to what it should move and made Ino move in that direction due to the pain. With her side left wide open, the man sent his foot crashing into her side and caused her to go flying in that direction. She was only stopped when a tree suddenly got in the path of her intended flight. Slumping to the ground, Ino felt the last of her consciousness going with it. Ino's team were all standing in petrified silence as they watched the man finish off their sensei. When she slumped against the tree and did not rise again, they knew that she had been finished. They knew she could fight no more. They would not let her sacrifice die in vain. They would fight too, and they would not give their bodies up willingly. All three nodded to each other and charged forward. Their varied war cries were screamed as they ran. Without any warning, however, a yellow and white blur appeared before them. It was as if he had simply materialized from thin air. Actually, to be more specific, he technically did just materialize out of thin air. Suddenly in front of the three girls was a man of about the same height as the first, unruly blonde hair and a white cloak on his back that had orange flame designs at the bottom of the cloak. Also on his back was a large scroll. All three of the girls had to stop suddenly or else run into the back of the man who had suddenly made his appearance. "Who are you?" the man in front of them asked loudly towards the man opposite him. His voice was rough and rugged, and by the way the girls watched the man with the Sharingan, that voice had effects it did not have on them. His eyes dilated in evident annoyance, but also hidden within his eyes was blatant fear, in its most primal form. The man took a step backwards in his more evident fear now. "You, what the hell are you doing here?" the man screamed at the blonde-haired man. He simply cocked his head to the side before he gave his answer. "Why?" "Well, first of all, you are a danger to this world and your name makes you out to be strong. More than that, however, you are a man fighting against a group of girls. While I may not wish to trample upon their pride, that is not the way a gentleman treats a lady, nor a group of women," the man answered back slowly as he took in the appearance of a man who was staring his greatest fear in the eye. "Women are less than men. They should not be treated as equals, as they are the servants. They make sure the men's needs are attended to." The man shouted back, forgetting about his fear then and there in his annoyance that this man was another who believed in equality. He was not prepared when the man in front of him began to laugh. It started off as a chuckle but escalated into a full-blown laughter directed towards the man in question. "You are exactly the type of man that I hate. Those who think women are not worth the dirt on their boots. I treat women as equal because I realize that in order for the world to continue forwards and show them that there are those that care, I have to treat them as equals. How else do you expect love to happen? If you treat a woman as if she is a slave, then she does not love you. That is dependence." The man caroused off in his obvious anger towards the statement of the Sharingan user. The man with the Sharingan stepped back at the rage-fueled words of the blonde-haired man. He was definitely scary with something he believed in. "It does not matter in this situation anyway," the blonde man started as he turned towards the three girls. They were now able to see him from the front and were now a little more understanding of why the man opposite them was so scared of him. The man was about 6 feet tall and had unruly blonde hair, as they already knew. He had a large white cloak that covered over mostly black attire, such as shinobi pants, black undershirt and black battle sandals, besides the white armor that covered his torso. There were also shoulder guards just under the cloak. It was not his figure that was imposing, not in the least. What scared the three of them and the other shinobi they guessed was the mask that he wore. His mask was what looked like it was Hunter Nin's standard issue, but it was so much more sinister than any they had seen before. There was a grin painted onto the mouth area of the mask. It looked like it had been scraped out of blood. The entire mask itself was completely black in contrast to the usual white color of Huntonian masks. The only other difference was the kanji written at the top of the mask, Akuma. Kyoki squeaked as she read the word that was etched into the forehead of the mask that the men before them wore. They could not see through the eye holes of the mask, and that scared them even more. You really are the devil everyone calls you. You sprout such shit about equality of women, then turn your back on me and focus on those girls. Are you afraid that my reasoning is correct and that I have the better beliefs? The man asked, gloating as he could tell that each of the words he spoke was definitely getting through, or so he thought. The guy behind that mask was definitely not showing any physical signs of those words affecting him. Unfortunately for you, I am only turning my back on you for one reason. I am making sure that these three are. The man was unable to finish his sentence as a heel came crashing down on the back of his head and slammed his face into the ground. The assailant done a backflip off from the position they had ended in and landed just in front of the girls. Ino whipped her hair to the side and it fell over her back into its usual position. Her outfit had generally stayed the same. She had the purple sleeveless shirt still. Over the purple sleeveless shirt was her Jonin vest, and she wore the black pants most Jonin wore. Her face was one of evident fury right now. She had woken up only to find her students at the mercy of a second man who had entered the area, so she leapt into action, although she had used a burst of her emergency chakra and was dangerously close to the edge now. "OWOO," came the voice of the man whose face was currently on the ground. He rubbed the back of his head as he spoke the words. Leaning back slightly, he tried to look up but noticed before he lifted his head that his mask was shattering. And here I wanted to keep my identity a secret until I completed my mission. I guess I failed a bit anyway, the man said as he lifted himself to a sitting position. That was when Ino saw them, those cerulean blue eyes that she had not seen in years, well, one of them to be exact. The mask he wore was now shattered across the right eye area, and she was afforded the sight of a man she had lost all track of communication with. He had certainly grown in the expanse of time that she had not seen him. His face was more rugged and looked so much more handsome than his childish face that she last remembered. Before she could even ask his name, there was a flash of chakra and suddenly the man with the Sharingan was behind her old friend. With hand seals that moved faster than she had ever seen since her days during the war, the man brought his hands to his mouth before shouting, "Ketten, Gyokaka no Jutsu!" With the command in place, a large ball of fire erupted from his mouth and completely covered the form of the man before her. "Naruto!" Ino screamed in fear for her friend. He had not any opportunity to even dodge that hit, but it also showed to her that she and her team were definitely at risk if the enemy shinobi could pull off things like that. Add to the equation that all four of them were dangerously low on chakra and they stand little to no chance. The blazing inferno that surrounded Naruto receded slowly. Ino and her team were afforded the sight of watching as the flames got smaller until they were in an almost spherical shape. Eventually the flames died away completely and revealed Naruto in a sitting position with his legs and arms crossed, more looking like he was meditating. He was facing the team of 4 women in his current state, and once the flames had completely disappeared, he snapped his head upwards and stared directly into Ino's eyes. Ino was entranced within his eye. They held so many things at once it was impossible to describe. His eyes danced with so many emotions it was almost as if an intricate play was being conducted across them. His eye told of his happiness at seeing her, but also told of his distinct fear of the current predicament. It was that same eye that momentarily changed, but she had not missed it. She had seen his eye flash to purple with concentric circles, alongside 3 tamu on each circle, making 9 tamu visible. After she had blinked, however, she noticed that the visage was gone and his beautiful and honest blue eyes were back. "Ino-chan, it's been a while," Naruto said to her, and done something that she had only ever seen Kakashi do. He gave her an eye smile. "Are you girls okay? Has he hurt any of you?" Naruto asked them seriously again. The 3 girls behind her shook their heads. They took Naruto's soft voice and his obvious familiarity with Ino as a sign that he could be trusted. Naruto then looked to Ino for her response, only to find the woman kneeling staring at him while he said, "No, he hasn't." "Naruto, who would have thought that I would still need to be saved from you, huh?" Ino asked the man before her, who flashed her his sexy false grin that sent shivers up her spine. She definitely missed that smile. "Okay, good. Don't worry girls, I'll finish this bastard off and have you all home before the night is out," Naruto responded to her, flashing his eye smile again. He then twisted on the spot and pushed himself back onto his feet in a rather acrobatic way. "You were going to say those women then?" the other man complained as he let loose a heavy sigh and moved into a fighting position that had his legs spread far apart to support his weight. His arms were out wide with both of his palms facing in front of him. Naruto looked at his stance in surprise. "You possess a Sharingan yet you use the stance of a Hyuga. You truly are a pain in the ass, shinobi," Naruto complained before he mirrored the stance himself and grinned at the face pulled by his enemy. "Do you think you are the only one outside of the Hyuga who knows this fighting style? I learned it a long time ago. Let's see who is strongest, shall we?" Naruto asked with a grin before he charged across the land towards his opponent. His fist drove forward with his middle and index finger pointing outwards. The man batted his hand away with an expulsion of chakra to the back of his hand and jumped away backwards. "Don't worry, Harazukuruha, I will make sure that you wished he did not procure those eyes. Your deaths shall be painful," Naruto said to the man coldly as he stood straight again and looked towards Haruza directly. Needless to say, Haruza was panicking now. If Naruto was as powerful as he was made out to be during the 4th Shinobi War, then he was doomed. I hope you all liked the video. And if you all want the next part of this video, please like the video and comment 3 hearts. Please subscribe to my channel so whenever I upload a video you will notify.